Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. China is at it again. It is issuing staple visas to people from Arunachal Pradesh in India. New Delhi has slammed this move, but it needs to do more. Can India explore a tit-for-tat move? Give staple visas to Tibetans, for instance. We'll discuss that. Meanwhile, on the other side of India's border, there's going to be action in Gwadar. Saudi Arabia is building Pakistan's biggest refinery, a project worth $10 billion. We'll decode the power politics behind this move. In India, the Manipur situation remains in focus. The state government is yet to be held accountable. The CBI, or the Central Investigation Agency, will take over the case of gang rape and abuse of women. Now, this is a conflict between two tribes that has escalated, two ethnicities. The attempt to paint this as a religious conflict can be dangerous. In Ukraine, homemade drones are doing the trick. They're cheap, $200 for one machine. And they're proving to be effective. In North Korea, Top Gun meets Toy Story and Kim Jong-un is showing off his weapons. And are you casteist if you carry your own spoon? We'll discuss why the attack on Sudha Murthy is wrong. The headlines first. In Niger, General Chiani declares himself to be the new leader. He overthrew the democratically elected President Bazoum in a coup just 2 days ago. The general is the head of the presidential guard. The president is still being held captive by his own guards. Singapore executes a woman for the first time since 2004. The 45-year-old woman was convicted for trafficking 30 grams of heroin and sentenced to death in 2018. She is the second person to be executed this week. The government resumed executions in March last year. Hong Kong wants to ban a protest song, but a court has rejected the move. The song "Glory to Hong Kong" became popular during the pro-democracy protest in 2019. It was considered seditious after China imposed a national security law to quell dissent. Jordan's parliament approves a cybercrime bill amid opposition. The bill will crack down on online speech seen to be harmful to national unity. Offenders will not only be fined but also jailed. Opposition lawmakers and human rights groups have slammed this bill. Forget global warming, our world is boiling now. The United Nations chief says the era of global boiling has arrived. Scientists warn that July is likely to be the world's hottest month on record. The Japanese city is apologizing for advising pregnant women. The mayor of the Onomichi city says sorry after public outcry over a flyer. The flyer advised pregnant women on what irritated husbands the most after their wives became mothers. We begin with stapled visas, the latest Chinese provocation. Although not a new one, they've done it before. China is issuing stapled visas for Arunachal Pradesh, and their targets this time are Indian athletes. You see, China is hosting the World University Games. A martial arts team from India was going to participate. This is the Indian Wushu team. They have 8 members. 3 of them are from Arunachal Pradesh. All of them applied for Chinese visas, but the 3 athletes from Arunachal got stapled visas. So the entire team has pulled out. They will not go for the tournament. And like I said, China has done this before. It's an old trick of theirs to harass the people of Arunachal Pradesh and to provoke India. But why does China do it? Because it says the entire state of Arunachal Pradesh belongs to them. They call it South Tibet. One problem though, their claim has no basis in fact. The whole world accepts India's sovereignty on Arunachal. But when China wants to reignite this dispute, it resorts to such tactics. The question is, why do it now? More importantly, how should India respond? For starters, India has at least acknowledged that this happened. New Delhi has lodged a protest. They've called the move quote-unquote unacceptable, which is right, but hardly enough. Mere condemnation is not taking us anywhere. The app bans and the trade restrictions have had a limited impact. So what should New Delhi do? Is it time for India to change its approach? On Vantage tonight, we'll discuss this. First, let's bring you more details of the case, starting with what are staple visas and why they're so controversial. Now, if you have a passport and you've traveled overseas, you know how visas work. They're usually printed on one page of your passport. In some cases, the issuing country uses a sticker. The idea is for the visa to stay on your passport permanently. Now, some countries even stamp them. They stamp the visas. They do this in addition to the printing or the sticker. This is the standard practice. But staple visas do not work that way. They are attached with pins or staples to your passport. They can be torn off or detached. And they're used to make a point. Staple visas are basically a political tool. China started using them in the year 2005. Not every Indian citizen who applied got a visa like this. China gave such visas to Indians from Arunachal Pradesh and in some cases to Indians from Jammu and Kashmir. This happened in 2008 and 2009. But their target mostly has been Arunachal Pradesh. How does it help Beijing? This is their twisted way of sending a message that Arunachal Pradesh is a part of China. So if you're visiting from there, you don't actually need a visa. That's what they're trying to say, and this is problematic on many levels. It's a challenge to India's sovereignty, also a national security issue. Because the staple visas are just one part of the story. China repeatedly undermines India's position on Arunachal. It issues Chinese names for Indian cities and releases controversial maps. So far, 3 such lists have been issued. The first one was in 2017, the second in 2021, and the third in April this year. 3 months later, the staple visas are back, while the situation at the border remains unchanged. This week, we heard from the Chinese again. They talked about what they call the Bali Consensus. We reported about it earlier this week. There was a meeting in Johannesburg. India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval met Wang Yi, who has now returned as China's foreign minister, Wang Yi. Now, Doval told Wang Yi that Chinese provocations have eroded trust. In response, China spoke about a consensus between Modi and Xi. The two leaders spoke last year at the G20 summit in Bali. There's a video of them shaking hands. India was asked about this encounter last year. India played it down, saying they were just exchanging courtesies. Was this discussed in the same exchange of courtesies, or was there a separate meeting between Modi and Xi Jinping in Bali? No side is prepared to divulge more details right now, but whatever be the case, it has made virtually no difference to the relationship. It has not stabilized the relationship. The border standoff has not been resolved. And now China is testing India on another front, Arunachal Pradesh. Clearly, dialogue and diplomacy have not worked. So is it time for India to try a different approach, to consider some retaliatory options? And what will those look like? China is issuing staple visas. So what is stopping India from doing the same? Issue staple visas to the people of Tibet who want to come to India. And this won't be without precedent. It is done in cases where passports and visas are not recognized. One of the most notable examples is that of Israel. Before the normalization wave, multiple Arab nations refused to stamp or recognize Israeli passports. Some countries still do it, like Iran, Kuwait, Lebanon, Libya, Syria, Saudi Arabia, even Pakistan. These countries do not recognize Israeli passports. In some cases, passport holders with an Israeli visa are not even admitted. They're denied entry. So there are ways to respond proportionally. It is only a matter of intent. Otherwise, you can issue one more statement, ban one more app, and remain stuck in this impasse. Some good news for Pakistan. You don't hear that every day. Saudi Arabia is building an oil refinery in the country, specifically in the province of Balochistan. The agreement was signed on Thursday. A total of 5 parties are involved, 4 state-owned Pakistani firms and the Saudi oil giant Aramco. How much money are we talking about? Around $10 billion. The Pakistani firms will contribute 40 to 45% of the initial money. Aramco will give the rest. The plan is to build the refinery here in the town of Gwadar. It's also where China is building a huge port. Now, why is this project important for Pakistan? Well, at this point, any project is important for Pakistan. Their economy is that bad. But beyond that, a couple of reasons. This is the first new refinery to be built in Pakistan in a decade. So 10 years, 0 refineries. In the 3 decades before that, they built 2. Long story short, Pakistan's output is not impressive. Their maximum capacity is around 20 million tons. Their actual output is just 11 million tons. And clearly that's not enough. Pakistan's domestic oil consumption is expected to reach 33 million tons next year. They produce just 1/3 of that. So this new refinery is not an additional boost, it's more of a necessity. But what's in it for Saudi Arabia? Why are they doing this? They were not 100% convinced by Pakistan's pitch, which is why this project was stalled for a long time. They thought it was too risky. So what explains the U-turn? Two major reasons. One, Pakistan has diluted the risk. Like I said, their state-owned companies will pump in a lot of money, around 40 to 45% of it. Riyadh will only have to give the rest, which is still a lot, but it's a lesser risk. So their exposure is limited if things go south. Reason number two, Pakistan sweetened the deal. They have given a 20-year tax holiday for the refinery, no custom duties, no surcharges, no sales taxes. After all that help, Saudi Arabia has agreed to build this. But in Pakistan, signing a deal is never enough. Neither is building the project. Security is the biggest issue in Pakistan, and this project is coming up in Balochistan of all places. It's a restive province in the southwestern part of the country. It's notorious for crackdowns. In May this year, a military installation was attacked by insurgents. At least 13 people were killed, including soldiers. Even foreign projects are not off limits. In fact, China is one of their big targets. Balochistan is a key part of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC. But the locals are pushing back. In 2021, a bus carrying Chinese workers was attacked. 9 of them died. The same year, there was a suicide attack on a luxury hotel in Quetta, the capital of Balochistan. And guess who was staying in that hotel? The Chinese ambassador. Now, if you ask the people of Balochistan, they have the same complaint. The money is coming, but it's not coming to them. And there are no jobs. The work is being done by Chinese workers and engineers. So here's the big question. Could Saudi projects also come under attack in Balochistan? It's certainly a possibility. Even Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif knows this. He was in Gwadar on Thursday. He called for protecting foreign projects in Balochistan. Listen to what he said.
China, Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the UAE are helping us without any condition. So it's our duty to safeguard their projects and investments.
A lot depends on the army, really. You see, Pakistan's civilian government does not run Balochistan. The army does, as they do the rest of the country. So without their blessing, you cannot be safe. In January this year, Army Chief Asim Munir had travelled to Saudi Arabia. I guess the talks went well. The Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, was also supposed to go in April, but his trip was cancelled. It made no difference in the end. The people who mattered had taken the call. And this would never happen anywhere else. The government is stepping down on the 12th of August. That's just 2 weeks away. In most democracies, this is a sitting duck period, but not in Pakistan. Their government just signed a deal for the country's biggest refinery. You can understand the urgency in Islamabad. But why is Riyadh playing along? We keep coming back to that question. They have a long history of supporting Pakistan, you see. The Saudis have bailed out Islamabad many times. Most recently, this month, Saudi Arabia gave assistance worth $2 billion to Pakistan. The reason is quite simple. Pakistan's military is very close to Saudi Arabia. Army Chief Asim Munir visited the country in January, like I said. It was his first foreign trip after taking office. His predecessor did the same. That's Qamar Javed Bajwa. He too visited Saudi Arabia first after taking office. Riyadh gave him a medal before he retired. This relationship is very transactional. The Saudis keep bailing out Pakistan. In return, the army gives them military muscle. Since the 1970s, Pakistan has trained Saudi soldiers and pilots. Plus, Pakistan is the only Muslim country with nuclear weapons, and even today that counts for something. But don't think this relationship is all rosy. Saudi Arabia has recently become ambivalent. In 2020, they refused to take deferred payments for oil. Riyadh said, pay up now. The same year, they asked Islamabad to repay loans worth $1 billion. Riyadh said, no more delays, you have to pay us now. Even this year, the kingdom was half-hearted. They did give $2 billion, but only after the International Monetary Fund agreed to bail Pakistan out. So the Saudi tap is not perennial. The flow has already lost momentum. If this Gwadar refinery fails, it could slow to a trickle or even shut. On to India now. The central government is plotting some moves in Manipur. The state has been gripped by violence since May, and last week there was a new trigger. A video from 3 months ago began circulating on social media. It showed a mob of men parading 2 naked women. One of them had been gang raped. The video shook our collective conscience. There was outrage on the streets and online. But has it led to anything? Well, the state government has proved to be a sitting duck. They arrested just 7 people, 7 out of a mob of 800. Plus all the senior officials, including the chief minister, have retained their jobs. So zero accountability from the state. But now the central government is making some changes. Home Minister Amit Shah spoke about Manipur on Thursday. He made 2 important announcements. One, to transfer the case to the CBI, that's the Central Bureau of Investigation. It is India's premier probe agency. Honestly, it should have been done earlier. Those 2 women accused the state police of being complicit. Apparently, the cops handed them over to the mob. How can you expect that same department to catch the culprits or even be unbiased? So, giving the case to the CBI is the right decision. The second announcement was about the trial. The centre wants it to be moved out of Manipur. Reports say the Home Ministry has already made the request to the Supreme Court. Again, you can understand why. It's normal for sensitive cases to be tried elsewhere. The idea is to contain the fallout. The Home Minister also talked about a crucial lead in the case. He says the man who recorded this video has been arrested. His phone has also been seized. Now, why is this important? The government hopes that this arrest will help connect the dots, maybe track down the rest of the mob. It's a stretch, but that's what the government is betting on. In the meantime, what is Manipur's chief minister up to? Well, nothing really. He's clearly lost control of the police. His authority is limited to Imphal Valley, and his people do not trust him. I guess someone has to sit in the chair. The truth is, things are not going fast enough. Only 7 people have been arrested, 0 people have lost their job, and the violence refuses to end. Just to be clear, we are not saying that things have not changed since May. They have. The number of deaths has come down consistently. In fact, the last one was reported on the 18th of July. But the absence of death does not mean peace. More than 50,000 people are still displaced in the state. They are living in temporary camps and shelters. Their houses and villages have been torched. Once they are back home, we can say there is peace. Once the Meiteis and the Kukis agreed to rebuild trust, we can say there is peace. Those are the 2 major communities in Manipur. Also the 2 warring sides. The equation between them is crucial to this conflict. The Kukis are mostly Christian. They live in the hills of Manipur. The Meiteis are mostly Hindus. They live in the Imphal Valley. Now let me underline the word mostly, because religion is not the fault line here. There are various other issues at play, like land ownership or jobs and educational quotas or preservation of language. These are not communities only defined by religion. Take the Meiteis, for example. Around 80% of them are Hindus, 16% follow the local religion called Sanamahism, and about 8% are Muslims. A lot of those reporting and commenting on Manipur have completely missed this nuance, including leaders and the media in the West. For them, it's a religious clash. Majority Hindus versus minority Christians. That's how the Western media paints it. Sadly, that's also how many Indian commentators have put it. What explains this mischaracterization? Perhaps ignorance. The Northeast has long been ignored by governments. There has been little effort to understand their sentiments, let alone their history. That's one problem. The second is internet knowledge. Overzealous keyboard warriors have jumped to analyze Manipur. They have hijacked the narrative. Many handles have described the Kukis as Christian terrorists. Others have converted Meitei demands into a Save Hindu campaign. Neither is true. In fact, the central government has warned against this. Home Minister Amit Shah visited the state towards the end of May. He spent 3 days there. He talked to more than 40 groups, 40. Before leaving, he had a message for the security forces there. Act in an unbiased manner, he said, and that's very important right now. We can't afford to put religious filters on this violence. We need to bring both communities to the table. We need to get them talking. Around 12 rounds of talks have been held so far, 6 each with Kuki and Meitei groups. The key is to push on to create conditions for a lasting peace. And how do you do that? By building trust, by showing that the government is not picking sides. This gang rape case will be a litmus test on that. If quick justice is guaranteed, things may improve. We have another story from China tonight on how it plans to dominate the high seas. China is acquiring new bases, and these are far beyond Chinese borders. Some new satellite pictures have emerged. They show that Beijing could be getting a new base overseas. And where is it? In Cambodia. Let me show you the pictures. This is the Ream Naval Base. A new pier is coming up here. Experts say it is almost complete now, and several reports say that China is secretly building this facility. The US believes so too. But both China and Cambodia have rubbished these reports. And yet the world is not buying their version. I'll tell you why. Let's go back to that picture. The new pier at the Ream Naval Base is strikingly similar to another facility, China's naval base in Djibouti. We have a satellite image of that base too. Let's put both the pictures side by side. Now look closely. Both the piers are similar, same size, same design, and both piers are long enough to berth warships, even aircraft carriers. China built the base in Djibouti, so it's quite possible that it took the same design to Cambodia and built another pier to serve the PLA there. Last year, China's foreign ministry faced some questions about this. They were asked about the base in Cambodia and if Beijing was upgrading it. China was cagey in its response.
China and Cambodia are comprehensive strategic partners, and the cooperation between the two countries in various fields is open, transparent, reasonable and legitimate. The Chinese-aided project to upgrade the Cambodian naval base is a normal aid activity to Cambodia.
It is normal aid activity, they said, but anything that involves a military base cannot be a normal affair. It is an investment, it's a strategic maneuver, and in China's case, part of a well-thought-out plan. The PLA is chasing supremacy on the high seas. Djibouti was the first step. Cambodia could be the second, but definitely not the last. Beijing won't stop at two bases. They have ambitious plans. They want naval bases across the globe, and they began work on it more than 2 decades ago. In the last 20 years, China has financed some 123 seaport projects, 123 projects. They will be built at 78 ports in at least 46 countries. And how much money has China poured into this? Around $30 billion. Are all of these ports military ports? Well, China does not use that label. It says these are civilian ports, commercial projects that enable trade. That's how they put it. But that doesn't mean they cannot be used for military purposes, because Chinese law enables it. It enables dual use of such facilities, meaning if the Chinese Navy needs a port, it can use it. A warship could easily make a stopover at any port that is owned or operated by a Chinese firm. Even if it is a civilian facility, the Navy has the right to use it. And these ports that China is financing could easily fulfill some key requirements like refueling and replenishment of supplies like food and water. In fact, the Chinese Navy is already making use of these ports. And where are they located? Let's pull up the map for you again. Chinese funded ports are everywhere, from Latin America to Africa, even near Europe, South Asia and East Asia. So far, China has committed to building projects at 78 ports. Out of these, 49 projects are either approved, under construction or already completed. And 8 of these ports are special. I'll tell you why I say this. It's because they are well equipped. They are the best suited for the PLA to have a base in the future. And which bases are these? I have a list again. The Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, the Bata port in Equatorial Guinea, the Gwadar port in Pakistan, Kribi in Cameroon, the Ream base in Cambodia, Luganville in Vanuatu, Nakala in Mozambique, and Nouakchott in Mauritania. Experts say these are the likely candidates. This is a short list for potential Chinese naval bases. Look closely and you'll notice that 2 of them are close to the Indian borders, Gwadar in Pakistan and Hambantota in Sri Lanka. Now the question to why China is building so many bases. Why do they need them? For 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is Taiwan. China wants a navy that is powerful enough to carry out a future invasion. The bases can support a potential operation like this. Reason number 2 is global domination. To challenge powers like the US, China needs facilities to project military power in every potential theater of conflict. Right now, only the US has this capability. Its forces can deploy anywhere in the world within hours. China wants to match that. Hence the plan to build more bases in remote areas. And you can imagine the response of the West. They will try to one-up. So this is now a race, and it can only have one outcome: higher risk of an armed conflict. It's day 520 of the Ukraine war. A lot has changed in these months. But if there's one thing that remained constant, it's Western military aid. The West has been pumping Ukraine with weapons, high-tech ones at that. But guess who is doing the job better? It's Ukraine's homemade drones, apparently. They're made on a shoestring budget. They cost around $200 per drone. They're held together by duct tape. I guess when creativity meets war, miracles can happen. These Ukrainian drones are now a force to reckon with. They're apparently hitting Russian forces hard. Our next report tells you all about these made-in-Ukraine drones.
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Or is it a homemade drone stuck together by duct tape? That's the million-dollar question Russia is asking. The war in Ukraine has been raging for some time now, and Kyiv has no dearth of weapons. The West is giving them one weapon after the other. Patriot missile systems, Leopard tanks, HIMARS rocket launcher systems. They have it all. But guess what's making a difference in the war? These drones. They are homemade. They are held together by duct tape, and they're taking down Russian vehicles. Drones may sound like high-tech machinery, but you can make a drone airframe with just about anything. Ukraine's DIY drones are similar. They are held by zip ties, tape, all sorts of stuff you can find at home, especially when your country is at war. More importantly, they are single-use. Once they take off, there is no guarantee that they will land safely. But don't be fooled by their shabby appearance. They may be tied with tape, but they are combat veterans. And they're taking down Russian vehicles. The system may sound crude, almost childish, but these DIY drones are very effective. They can fly behind enemy lines, they can destroy valuable targets, and they can also drop bombs. More importantly, they are available at bargain prices. Take one of these drones, for example. The body is a simple plastic frame. It has one video camera, so that's around $14. Then there's a flight controller, a basic one at that. That costs around $44. And finally, an antenna. That costs $20. The total cost would be around $200. $200 to take down your enemy. But even if they're cheap, they are quite effective. If you attach grenades to it, it becomes a guided anti-tank weapon. It can find targets and hit them with a high accuracy. Basically, unsuspecting soldiers could get the shock of their lives. The Ukraine war has gone on for over 500 days. Kyiv is flush with weapons. It is pressing on with its counter-offensive. But Western armory is struggling against Russian defenses. There is little evidence to show that the weapons of the West have helped Ukraine in any drastic measure. So, will these homemade drones now do the job? Both Russia and Ukraine already use drones. They are a crucial part of the war. But Ukraine's DIY project may turn into a win for Kyiv. They could be crucial for the counter-offensive and tip the scales in their favor.
So those were made-in-Ukraine drones. Now let's talk about some made-in-India weapons like this one, the Pinaka. It's India's multi-barrel rocket launch system. The Pinaka was first thrust into action in 1999, that's during the Kargil War. It helped the Indian Army with its precision strikes, so clearly the Pinaka proved its worth. It is one of our most effective and reliable weapons systems. Many even put it at par with the HIMARS, that's America's game-changing rocket launcher system. But why are we suddenly talking about the Pinaka? Because it seems to have ruffled some feathers. Apparently, it's giving Azerbaijan sleepless nights. They have summoned the Indian envoy over it. Let me give you some context here. In 2022, India and Armenia signed a defense deal. It was to procure the Pinaka missile launchers. The contract was worth 2,000 crores. For India, it was a boost for its indigenous defense industry. For Armenia, it increased its military capabilities. So both the countries were happy. But it left Azerbaijan seething. And why is that? Because Armenia and Azerbaijan are locked in a conflict. It's for this region, the Nagorno-Karabakh region. Internationally, it was recognized as part of Azerbaijan, but the residents are mostly Armenian, so it's a classic ethnic conflict. In 1917, Armenia and Azerbaijan fought over the region. In 2020, they waged a war again. And since then, the situation has remained tense. It's because of these tensions that Armenia chose the Pinaka. You see, Azerbaijan uses a lot of drones. They're called the suicide drones. In such a case, a rocket launcher system must shoot quickly and then disappear. The Pinaka has that capability, which makes it very important for Armenia. But for Azerbaijan, it seems like a red line. They have apparently protested over a cargo of Pinaka launchers reaching Armenia. We have some videos. They were put out by a news portal based in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan. They show a camouflaged truck convoy moving towards Iran's Nurduz border. That's the border it shares with Armenia. Now, this website claims that this was military cargo. It was first delivered to the Iranian port of Bandar Abbas and then it was being moved to Armenia. And who did this cargo belong to? According to the website, it's from India. They cite quote-unquote independent sources to claim this. Hours after this report, Baku jumped into action. A presidential advisor summoned the Indian ambassador, this man, Sridharan Madhusudanan. He said Azerbaijan was concerned both about these shipments and also the growing India-Armenia military cooperation. He also apparently questioned the timing of these shipments. He said Azerbaijan is working on a peace deal with Armenia, so sending weapons at a time like this is an escalation. Now, all of these statements are based on reports. There have been no official confirmation or statements from Azerbaijan, and India too has not commented, officially at least. But we can see why Baku may be protesting. They've never been close to New Delhi. In fact, they're part of a new emerging axis, the Azerbaijan-Pakistan-Turkey axis. In the year 2017, these three countries signed a trilateral agreement. This was to establish security cooperation. Azerbaijan used Turkish drones to fight the war in Armenia. On the other side, Armenia and India have historical ties, so it's no surprise that they sealed a defense deal. And that too with the Pinaka. It is India's first genuinely indigenous system. Virtually none of its parts have been imported. So this is a significant deal. And it's not the only one with Armenia. They also want drones from India. They want ammunition and mid-range surface-to-air missiles from India. So Baku can complain all it wants to about meddling and escalating tensions. But this is how it works. When there is a conflict, countries ramp up their defenses everywhere in the world. In this case, Armenia turned to India. And India is working on establishing itself as a defense player, so it must seize any opportunity that comes its way. There's often debate about what's the oldest job in the world. Some say it's farming, others say it's sex work. But tonight, let's talk about the newest job, trolling. It's a full-time job nowadays. You spend the whole day bullying and criticizing someone. There are millions of trolls on the internet. Meet their new target, Sudha Murthy. She's a writer and philanthropist. She's also the wife of Infosys co-founder Narayan Murthy. Why are trolls targeting her? Because of what she said in a recent interview. Listen to this. I am a pure vegetarian. I don't even eat eggs or garlic. What I'm scared of is that the same spoon will be used for both vegetarian and non-vegetarian food. It weighs on my mind a lot. It's pretty casual, right? Well, not in the wild wilderness called Twitter or X, I guess. This statement has divided people. Some people are calling Sudha Murthy casteist. Others have defended her. They say it's all about personal choice. And this is just one example. We've seen so many in recent years. You say something innocuous on social media, you probably have no malicious intent, but the next day your inbox is full. Trolls are attacking you left, right and center. Your words have been twisted to mean something completely different, something you did not even imagine. What does it say about the times we live in? Well, two things really. One, everyone is looking for a villain. If you can't find a real one, just make up something, like caste and food choices. And two, it's pretty easy being a keyboard warrior. You don't have to enter the public gaze. You don't even have to use your real name. Just shoot and scoot. And this is problematic on many levels. It's like you're creating a problem just to criticize it. But things weren't always like this. Being woke and raising your voice was considered good at one point. If you were woke, you were cool. But have things gone too far? Well, for most people, the answer is yes. Look at this report from 2017. Students in Hampshire attacked students from another college. Why? Because their hair was braided. Apparently, hair braids is cultural appropriation. Do you see how silly that sounds? I'll give you another example. This is from PETA, the animal rights group. They want you to stop saying things like kill two birds with one stone or beat a dead horse. Why? Because apparently it's anti-animal. Now, don't get me wrong. They do some great work on animal rights. But is this criticism necessary? No one is serious about killing two birds with one stone or beating a dead horse. It's just something you say without any malicious intent. Some of you may think, why bother with such issues at all? If people are woke, let them be. But such comments impact the way we think. It may put off people who are actually allies. Take a look at this article. It says the far right has hijacked the trend of at-home fitness. Basically, that workouts have been politicized. Does it make sense to you? Workouts have nothing to do with politics, yet this writer has found a villain where there was none. And the result is this: more people are feeling alienated. The average person you meet is not the incarceration of evil. They support equality, they try to stay away from violence, and they try to say the right things most of the times. What they oppose is trivialism. Now let's talk about North Korea. The Hermit Kingdom has been awash in fanfare. They're celebrating the 70th anniversary of the Korean War armistice. Of course, Pyongyang spins it a little differently. They call it Victory Day, and they're celebrating this make-believe victory with make-believe jets, apparently. The country has released a propaganda video which looks like a mix of Top Gun and Toy Story. And we are not making this up. But that is not all, of course. A grand military parade is also being held in Pyongyang. They've called Russian and Chinese officials to watch the festivities. Russia's defense minister is the guest of honor. He was seen standing next to North Korea's Kim Jong-un during the parade. And what were they looking at? The banned missiles from North Korea's sanctioned missile development program. Here's a report.
If there's one thing all authoritarians seem to like, it's a grand military parade. A chance to pat themselves on the back, looking at all the money spent on keeping their regime secure. No one quite epitomizes this as much as North Korea. The Kim family has spent decades lording over the country, and they treat themselves to a grand parade regularly to mark their control. This year is no different. On the 70th anniversary of the Korean War armistice, missiles were once again rolling through Pyongyang's streets. Its skies were abuzz again with fireworks and combat drones. These drones were also rolled out during Pyongyang's parade. A supposedly nuclear-capable underwater attack craft was also showcased. And the North Korean people were literally jumping up and down in apparent excitement. At the same time, the country released this propaganda video of its Air Force. This seems like a uniquely North Korean practice. The video was shot as though it was inspired by the Top Gun movies. Of course, the initial part, which shows the pilots flying toy jets, was an interesting choice. It doesn't really seem like the best way to showcase one's Air Force superiority, but maybe there's some deep, extremely well-hidden purpose behind the toy plane shots. Anyway, eventually the video does go on to highlight the Hermit Kingdom's planes and pilots. Of course, the pilot rubbing his face gently on the flag looks a bit strange. But it's peak Pyongyang propaganda. And overseeing all this propaganda, pomp and pageantry is Kim Jong-un, the so-called supreme leader of North Korea. He was seen waving at his energetic subjects, saluting the soldiers who marched past his viewing platform, and clapping at the military equipment being rolled out in front of him. On his right side was Sergei Shoigu, Russia's defense minister, the guest of honor at this parade. He played the part well, clapping and saluting along with Kim and occasionally engaging in what looked like serious discussions. On the North Korean despot's other side was another high-profile guest, Chinese Communist Party Politburo member Lee Hongzhong. Lee isn't exactly the most high-profile of Chinese officials, but the 66-year-old is still part of China's top governing bodies, so his presence can be seen as an endorsement by Beijing. Kim had Russia on his right and China on his left, which is of course highly symbolic. Shoigu and Lee have been in Pyongyang for a few days now, making public appearances with Kim and being shown North Korean weapons up close. Shoigu also met his North Korean counterpart for formal talks.
Democratic People's Republic of Korea is an important partner of Russia. We have common borders and a rich history of cooperation.
He called Pyongyang an important partner, and Pyongyang seems to have gone out of its way to make their partner welcome. Look at these pictures from meetings between Kim and Shoigu. You see images of Russian President Vladimir Putin watching over them. It seems to be a somewhat over-the-top gesture of hospitality, a tribute to the enduring partnership of the Red Triad. But now it seems China and Russia are openly becoming North Korea's partners in crime as well. We say this because of the weapons that the Russian and Chinese delegations have been viewing for the past few days. There didn't seem to be any rebuke of North Korea's ballistic missiles. We're talking about the intercontinental ballistic missiles like the Hwasong 17 and 18. Missiles which are believed to be capable of striking every inch of American soil. Yes, these missiles being paraded about can allegedly hit parts of the US even 12,500 kilometers away. And even if the range is an exaggeration by North Korea, the missiles are considered nuclear capable. So naturally, they are banned. They've been banned under UN Security Council resolutions, meaning, as members of the Security Council, Russia and China had also declared these missiles illegal. Yet the delegations were happy enough to clap along with Kim as the missiles were being displayed. It seems Moscow and Beijing have forgotten their earlier objections. And why wouldn't they? Over the past year, the world seems to have moved backwards. A war in Europe, the threat of nuclear destruction, battle lines from the Cold War era re-emerging. So it's easy to see why Moscow and Beijing would prop up their old North Korean allies again. What this likely means is that Kim Jong-un will be emboldened, redouble his efforts to produce sanctioned weapons with no fear of reprisal. And that's not good news for the rest of the world.
And finally, the latest trend/talking point on social media. It's called the lazy girl, and it's the opposite of what we saw a decade back. The 2010s were the decade of the girl boss. The overambitious woman, her goal was to lean in, to do more at work and then some. But now we're in the era of anti-work, the great resignation. Studies say 6 in 10 workers apparently don't give everything they've got anymore. And the result is this: the girl boss has bid us goodbye. Work life has a new reigning queen. And the so-called lazy girls are taking over social media. They're chasing what's called a lazy girl job. What is this all about? Our next report tells you.
Lazy girl job. It sounds a bit ridiculous. But before you jump to conclusions, listen to this. What is a lazy girl job? It's low-stress work, usually remote. Hours fall within a 9-to-5 schedule, and the pay is good. It allows for financial freedom. Sounds like the perfect package to many. And that explains why it has a trending hashtag on social media, with tens of millions of views. Seems like women want to be lazy girls in a lazy world. And they're going online, then screaming from metaphorical mountaintops about such jobs. Like in this video. Here's what we noticed. All lazy girl jobs aren't the same. They tick different boxes for different people. But every lazy girl job meets general criteria. For starters, it's a healthy work environment. There's a sense of safety. No long, gruesome shifts or commutes. Secondly, it's either completely remote or hybrid friendly. And thirdly, it pays well. Meaning, people earn a comfortable salary. All in all, with a lazy girl job, workers get to prioritize themselves. Now, many are jumping on this trend, embarking on job search journeys, in the search of the perfect lazy job. But there are many who disagree. After all, in most societies, our work is our worth. And who would want to be lazy? The term itself has a negative connotation. It's seen as the wrong attitude for building a meaningful career. Kind of like when Kim Kardashian said this and became a meme. But experts say something contrary. In reality, there's nothing lazy about a lazy girl job. It's about showing up to work, doing your best, doing what you're being paid for, and then focusing on your personal life. Or, as the Gen Z put it, getting a life. Lazy girl jobs only seem lazy when compared to traditional workplace expectations, where people must move fast and break things, be the first in and last out. And look at what that's done to the workforce. Burnout and sickness have become a homogeneous part of most work lives. According to a Microsoft study, nearly 50% of employees are burnt out. And that's average worldwide data. Some countries have it worse than others. In Asian countries like South Korea and China, the 996 is vastly common. It's where people work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. Death by overwork is a common phenomenon across South Korea and Japan. An average South Korean works for over 1,900 hours a year. That's 200 more than the OECD average. In neighboring Japan, work averages at around 1,600 hours. What about India? According to the International Labour Organization, it has the fifth longest working hours in the world. A study says that the ideal work week has 39 hours. An average worker in India works 48 hours a week. If that limit is exceeded, a person's mental health begins to deteriorate, meaning an average Indian worker's mental health is hampered every week. How are other countries faring? An average worker in the UK works 36 hours a week. Same for Israel, and 37 hours a week in the US. It's lower than the 39-hour limit, but only marginally. The situation is not that bad everywhere, of course. Some Swiss and Scandinavian cities like Oslo, Bern, Helsinki have the best work-life balance, but such instances are a rarity. Across the world, people enter the workforce with high hopes. They want a swanky job, a corner office, and off-site meetings in the Bahamas. Instead, what do they get? Constant backache, meetings that could have been emails, and migraines, sometimes in the form of walking, talking micromanagers. And that, if you're lucky. Many workers are ground to the bone. Working cultures treat people as replaceable machine parts who constantly over-deliver at the cost of their own well-being and personal life. And in such times, the lazy girl job is a beacon of hope. If not that, it's at least a learning opportunity. That's the goal of this story. We don't demand that you up and leave your job or shape your career around a TikTok trend. We only urge that you re-evaluate your work. Ask, how much is enough? And if that doesn't crack it, try embodying Beyoncé and chant, release your job, release the time.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story, starting with Niger, a country in West Africa where supporters of a coup set fire to the headquarters of the ruling party. A runaway bull wreaked havoc in the streets of Peru. 5 people were injured. The video of a giant Hummer is going viral. It is 3 times bigger than a regular SUV. This car has been dubbed Humzilla, and reportedly it belongs to the royal family of the UAE. And finally, taking you back in history to the year 1914, on July 28, the First World War began after Austria-Hungary declared a war on Serbia. Following this, more than 30 nations declared war between 1914 and 1918. It led to unprecedented destruction and loss of human life. We may be leaving you on a grim note, but we hope your weekend is happier. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on Monday.
The enemy was undoubtedly attacking on the... The enemy was undoubtedly...
anda viejo, 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 mete mano, viejo.